Good morning. Wasn't that amazing? Thank you. Thank you so much. As Bill said, my wife and Pat and I have moved our place of worship here at Providence. And so it's so good to be with family in a sort today. But to stand in this most prestigious pulpit and preach is a great privilege for me, and I'm so thankful. Would you pray with me? Lord, thou who art over us, thou who art one of us, thou who art, grant us a pure heart that we may see thee, a humbled heart that we may hear thee, a heart of love that we may serve thee, and a heart of faith that we may abide in thee. Amen. The power of one. Small church, a small village church was gathering for worship. And it came time to sing the first hymn. The organist prepared to play the introduction. She pressed the keys, but not a sound came from the instrument. She changed the stops. She pressed harder on the keys and the pedals. Still, nothing came out. Panicked, she looked at the minister with a dire expression. He knew what she was trying to do, so he asked the congregation, anyone here know anything about organs that could come up and help us with it? And a few jumped up and came forward. But in the corner sat the church caretaker. And he just started looking at all that commotion, stood up, walked over to the organ, picked up the power cord, and plugged it in. The instrument lit up and sound came from the organ. Oftentimes, all it really does take is one thought, one solution, one leader, one initiative, one action. And do we focus on the many to the neglect of the one? Our text in the gospel today affirmed the importance, the significance of one. In these parables, Jesus spoke to the value of the one, even over the 9 or the 99. The shepherd knew where all of his sheep were, but this one was no less than the others, and he took a chance to go find it. I also like that Jesus, and then Luke recording it, was as an equal opportunity finder, in that the second parable had a woman as the primary. She had 9 coins, probably enough to get by with, but that 10th one, it was too valuable, too needed to forsake. Actually, the background going on in these 2 parables, Jesus is dealing with the egotistical religious elite of Judaism, chastising him for mingling with people and crowds of ill repute in his day. Luke's gospel has always been especially mindful to accentuate how Jesus related to the marginalized and those deemed unacceptable by the more pious. And so Jesus, in this chapter, offers 3 parables, 2 that are our text today, the lost sheep, the lost coin, and then the more well-known by all of us, the lost son, or the prodigal son, is next. Jesus gave prominence to the need and the power of the one. So what can we say about this? Well, First, I see in this text there is immediacy. Notice how both the shepherd and the woman lost little time in going forth in their searching. The shepherd did not wait for a relief shepherd. The woman did not wait for dawn's light. She lit a lamp, and they both started looking right away. Immediately. A proverb says, when you kill time, remember, it has no resurrection. A man went to see a doctor, his doctor, after having a whole battery of medical tests, and the doctor tells him the grim news that he only has 6 months to live. After taking a a deep breath and realizing the gravity of his situation, he looked at his doctor and he said, well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go move in with my mother-in-law. The doctor looked at bewilderment. Why would you do that? And the man said, because it'll be the longest 6 months of my life. We live in an age where time has become one of our most precious resources. Author Susan Ertz once said, millions long for immortality who don't know what to do with themselves on a rainy Sunday afternoon. The urgent pursues us with relentless fury. Telephone calls come 24/7 now with our cell phones. Emails pile up if we don't respond to them. We text or we scan the net when we eat. We rush to our next destination, not taking the time to enjoy the route along the way. Now, the lost items, they called for urgency, but they did it because they were important. This past week, we remembered again September the 11th, 2001. In mere seconds, our whole world was changed forever. We can probably all recall where we were and what we were doing when we watched those two planes plow into the Twin Towers. Our memories can be prodded when we remember United 93 crashing into Pennsylvania or American 77 crashing into the Pentagon. In one morning, time stopped, and the important took over the urgent and all else. There is an old devotion called The Interview with God. I love it. I really love it. I use it way often, too much perhaps. But in this devotion, the writer is dreaming that he has an audience with God. And he asks God, what is it that surprises you most about humanity? And God responds with this. It says that we get bored with childhood, rushing to grow up, and then we long to be children again. We expend all of our health to make our money, and then we expend all of our money to get back our health. We worry about tomorrow, that we fail to live into today, and we live as if we'll never die, and then we die as we've never lived. Milt Wood was a car salesman, and he was a really good car salesman. But he was very active with the Union Gospel Mission, working with juvenile delinquents. Week by week, Milt would lead Bible studies. He would counsel. He would have prayers with the boys who were in trouble. During exploratory surgery, it was discovered that Milt was full of cancer. There was nothing they can do, and he died within a week. But it was remarked at his funeral, amidst all the praise and the accolades for his work with these young men, no one ever asked how many cars he had sold. The immediate is all we have. Allow what is important to claim it as much as you can. Then second, there's the obvious, perhaps, to us. We had immediacy, there's the obvious, the importance of one. Now, to us, it might seem silly to leave the 99 to go look for the one. But what if you were the one? As well, that lost coin, that one lost coin in that day may be the difference between eating for a day or eating for a week. They were important. Just consider for a moment the importance that does come with the singular. We have 2 eyes, we have 2 ears, we have 1 nose but 2 nostrils, 2 lungs, we have 2 kidneys, we do have 2 intestines, but we only have 1 brain. We have 1 heart. We have 1 soul. And those are considered the vital, important organs. And yeah, we do have the 1 mouth and do a lot of good, and sometimes they can do a lot of damage. We have 1 planet in our solar system that can sustain life. We have 1 sun that emanates just exactly in order for us to live. There's usually 1 special place we call home amidst all of our abodes. We have 1 birth, 1 life, 1 death. So in all of that oneness, God stands and looks at you, and you as 1 person matters to God. Every single one of us. Nobody ever looks exactly the same. No one acts alike. Even twins have variations. And if you were the only one to ever walk the face of this earth, Jesus would have still carried that cross just for you. Hear me to say, you are important. Dr. John Getty was a Presbyterian missionary who was sent to Aneityum, a small island in the South Pacific, for 24 years. On a tablet erected in his memory in the church where he preached there, these words are inscribed. When he landed in 1848, there were no Christians. When he left in 1872, there were no heathen. The importance of 1. And so that leads me to this final point, the impact of 1. If there is immediacy for 1 and the importance in 1, there has to be the implication of the impact of 1. What you and I do matters. It matters to God. It matters to others. We can make a difference. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. We have impact, even when we're not aware of it. But I would invite you to live life as if you were aware. And so I want to close with this simple but well-known classic. John was a freshman in high school. And one day as he was going home, he saw another student walking, and he looked like this other person was carrying every one of his books. His name was Kyle. John thought, why would anyone bring home all of his books on a Friday? This guy has really got to be a nerd. But just then, John saw some other kids run up to Kyle, push the books out of his hands, make him trip, so he fell on the ground and his glasses went sailing. John's heart went out to him, and he went over, he picked up his glasses, handed it to Kyle. He couldn't help but notice Kyle had tears in his eyes. John helped him up and said, those guys are jerks. They really do need to get a life. And all Kyle would say was, thanks. They started talking and realized that they lived in the same neighborhood, so they walked home together. Discovered they had a lot in common. And John began to see that Kyle's a pretty cool guy. And over the next 4 years, they became good friends, even to the point of being best friends. In their senior year, Kyle was valedictorian of the class, and therefore he would give the commencement speech. Kyle stood before his peers, now a young man of great respect. And he started his speech, he cleared his throat, and he said this: graduation is a time to thank those who help make it through the tough years. Your parents, your teachers, your siblings, maybe a coach, but mostly your friends. I'm here to tell you today that being a friend is one of the best gifts you can ever offer to someone. You see, 4 years ago, one weekend, I planned to take my own life. I cleaned out my locker that Friday so my mom wouldn't have to come to the school to do it herself. And I carried all my stuff home. And then Kyle looked at John, and he looked at him hard. And he said, but that day, thankfully, I met a new friend. He came along and he saved me from doing the unspeakable. And he concluded by saying this: never underestimate the power of your impact on someone else's life. One. Each of us live in the immediacy. Be aware of the moments when time stops and take advantage to make them count. Each of us is important to God, important to your significant others in your life. Never take that for granted. Always believe it. And each of us have impact. Let's use it for God, for the kingdom, for good. And there will be rejoicing in heaven when we discover our oneness and use it to set things right. Amen.